All right, hello, welcome. This is the BBB Podcast. Hello again. My name is Mike Bowerman, Bowertendo. To what I see on my screen, actually, I'm going to invert it probably. So my left is going to be Matt, celiac_Matt. And to the bottom, which is weird because I should be the bottom, right?
Our bottom, gotcha.
Our bottom here, our thumbs down, is Scott Stevens. And we'll be using the handle SMS Stevens Streams eventually. We keep saying that for the entire season. It's like one of those things where we're just going to say it and it's just going to like be a thing, and maybe it'll happen.
It'll be the big series finale.
Oh, you're actually streaming? Okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay.
I'm making no guarantees. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe.
Make dates and you'll meet them. Throw dates out there and you'll meet them. Anyway, we're trying a new format this week. So we're trying to give you more bite-sized chunks. I know that we're just so rich in just awesomeness that you can only have it's like a really, really good chocolate. Like you can only have a little bit of it. If you eat a whole box, you get sick, right? So we're going to kind of split it up.
Like a dark chocolate, a milk chocolate, a white chocolate?
Any kind of chocolate, but like not Hershey's. I'm talking about like the good stuff, like the stuff that comes from overseas, kind of stuff.
Ooh.
The really rich and just tastes good. Doesn't matter what kind of chocolate it is, just tastes good. So we're splitting it up, and we're going to be doing a two-parter. So we're started off with the special episode. We're going to be talking about nothing but Tears of the Kingdom in this episode of the podcast. So today on this episode, what we're going to be talking about is our likes and dislikes with the game, and just kind of general impressions of it. None of it. Well, I'm pretty certain I know the answer to this, but just to be safe, none of us have beaten it yet, right? Like the story, right?
No, not even close.
Yeah, not even close, right? I think all of us are like maybe like 5% along in the story. So, okay, that's fine. So these are, we'll call them impressions, but I believe we all have a good amount of hours into the game that we can actually speak on it. So that's what we're going over today. And on our next episode later this week is going to be just stories, just fun stories that we've had in our own experiences, because none of us have had the same experience. We've been talking along the way, and it's like completely different experiences and paths and all sorts of stuff. So that being said, I'm going to go last because I already know how this is going to go. I'm going to go just dead last, okay? I'll let you guys fight for who wants to go first and who wants to go second and go from there.
I call dibs. So, what you guys may not know is usually when we're getting ready to film a podcast, we have our Discord private chat. We kind of go back and forth, talk about what the topic's going to be, give some like bullet points. And it's been a very contentious DM exchange between us. Just to give you a little bit of a preview, it's kind of me and Matt on one side of Tears of the Kingdom is a fantastic game, but there is things we don't like about it or room for improvement, versus Team Mike of Mr. like Tears of the Kingdom is Jesus' second coming in video game form. So we're going to probably have some testy moments during this podcast. Just warning you, we're still going to be friends at the end of this. You don't have to be concerned about it. It will not end our friendship, potentially. And yes, I know you may be saying to yourself, like, man, you guys' podcast is a cluster and you're actually planning it behind the scenes. How terrible would it be if you weren't even doing any planning at all? And all I have to say to you is you're very mean. We work very hard on this podcast. Please be more considerate before you say those things like that to us. But anyhow, before I get into the negative, I just want to talk about the positive. And there is a ton of positive to talk about the game. Like right now, I'm going to be kind of honest. I don't even want to record this podcast. I want to just be playing the game some more. You are welcome, people out there, that I'm taking some of my precious time playing the controller down and talking to you. I think at this point I have about 30 hours into the game.
35.
35. It's competition.
It's stupid. One of the stupid Switch things where you can't see your own, like if you go to yourself, but if you go to the trending, and of course Zelda's trending, if you go there, you see all your friends, and it shows everybody's hours instead of just showing it.
I'm 35.
So you're at 35.
You can see yours. You can see yours. There's a way to get to it. At least
no, you can't right now. You have to wait until there's past like 8 or 9 days, It'll say you
Oh, they
first
don't load the
played 8
data?
days ago. You first
Oh,
played
that's
9.
stupid.
It's stupid. It's stupid. And then after that, then you can see it. But anyway, go ahead, continue. 35 hours, go.
I think the question everybody wants to know right now before we continue is who has more hours into the game, me or Matt?
Scott. It has to be Scott. Mike, you can look at our numbers. What are my numbers? Do you have that written down
Yeah.
somewhere? He's pulling up
I
his Switch
think
right
I
now.
remember you are at
I gotta be at like 20
I think you just hit 20 hours, Matt, and I think
yeah.
Scott's at 35. But give me a second, I'll look it up here.
Yeah,
So yeah, you gotta go to the trending. It's so stupid.
I have the least amount played for sure.
Cube 95 hours.
Yeah, he's winning.
Okay. All right.
But he had the week off though. He took an entire week off and he meant it. So yeah. So let me go down here. SM Stevens 35 hours or more. So I was right there. And Celiac Matt 20 hours or more. I was right about that too. All right.
Where do you think you're at? I'm guessing you're around 40.
I'm guessing around 40. You guys could go look it up if you wanted to. I can't because it's stupid. But you guys could go look it up on your Switch. You just look at the trending. But I'll have to wait.
Too much work. It's in the other room, and that's a whole thing. Me grabbing it. I do have to blame my mom. How dare she want me to spend Mother's Day with her and not play any video games at all that day? I blame her. I could have spent the entire time playing Zelda, but yeah, whatever. Anyhow, back to the game. So I kind of compare it a little bit to Borderlands 2. Like, I remember when I first played Borderlands 1, and like, this is a great game. I can't think of anything to improve upon this game. This is so awesome. And then I played Borderlands 2, and I'm looking back, I'm like, oh man, this is so much better than Borderlands 1. They totally like improved the game in ways that I didn't even really think was a problem, or, you know, adding new things in there that like are such a good quality of life improvement. And so that's kind of my thing with Tears of the Kingdom. I'm going to be 100% honest. I've put about 200 hours into Breath of the Wild. I don't think I could ever play Breath of the Wild again. I just can't. There's so many cool, awesome features that got put in there. And you don't really realize how empty of a world Breath of the Wild felt like until you play Tears of the Kingdom. And, you know, they put all of those extra, like, side quests. Side quests actually matter, and they feel somewhat important. Yes, at the end of them, you're only just getting a silver ruby. Oh, well. But at least they actually feel relevant and a little bit more worthwhile. And there's a lot more in the game to discover. And I'm going to be 100% honest. Usually when I start a game, I have to go and platinum it, 100% it, before I can move on to my next game. That's not happening with Zelda. Zelda is going to be kind of a like, I'm going to play it for a couple weeks, and then I'm going to take a break and play something else. And then I'll go back to Zelda. And then I'm going to take another break. So hopefully my goal is by the end of this year, I will be 100% on Zelda, or at least as close to 100% as I can be. So it sounds like Matt has some thoughts on this.
Oh, I'm very much in the camp that games don't have to be 100%ed. Just enjoy it and you're done and good to go. But what I wanted to bring up is there was a meme someone sent in my Discord today. It was by our buddy Rymos, and it shows an image of Breath of the Wild, and it says 2017, a super innovative open world conversion of the Zelda series. And then it shows 2023, and it shows a side-by-side image of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And underneath Breath of the Wild, it says tech demo. And underneath Tears of the Kingdom, it says real game. So what you just said, like that is actual consensus. We're just like, wow, Breath of the Wild, objectively.
When I started playing Tears of the Kingdom, that was literally the first thought I thought of was Breath of the Wild looks like it was a tech demo that they were trying to sell the Switch on.
Yeah, which, you know, technically
it did. It did.
Well, here's just one thought on that. I'll give it back to Scott to finish what his opening thoughts are. Is I have essentially let some friends of my wife and I borrow Breath of the Wild for them and their two daughters. They have now had that game borrowed longer than I've ever owned the game. And I was just like, I should get that back at some point. And then I started playing Tears of the Kingdom. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. They can keep it. It's theirs now. Enjoy. Happy birthday forever. But sorry, go ahead, Scott. I was just amused by that.
One really fascinating thing, though, is I'm not sure, and like all you viewers at home, like I highly recommend looking some of this up too. A lot of the devs for Tears of the Kingdom have released like very interesting interviews. One of the things they talk about a lot is kind of how Matt was saying, how in hindsight now it seems like Breath of the Wild kind of felt like a tech demo. And just reading about all the shortcuts and all the things they did for Breath of the Wild because they were so limited by the Wii U technology. So one thing that I absolutely love in the game, and it seemed to be like such a simple thing, they're like, why didn't you have this in Breath of the Wild, is caves. You just randomly chilling out in the mountain, you see a cave. And I'm weird. I'm one of those types of people in any RPG. If I see a cave, I'm like, I'm stopping what I'm doing and I'm going this cave. Because the way video games have me hardwired to think, it's like you go into a cave, end of cave, you're going to find something cool. And fortunately, that's the case a lot for Breath of the Wild. Wasn't really the case for Elden Ring. Screw you, Elden Ring. Sorry, when I said Breath of the Wild, I meant Tears of the Kingdom. But reading some of these interviews from the devs, they said that this was an idea they had back in Breath of the Wild, and they couldn't do it because of the Wii U. Now, how limited the Wii U was that you couldn't even go and put caves on the side of mountains, that's kind of mind blowing. But I mean, I assume that's the case and that's true. And there's just a whole bunch of other features like, what are the name? The Divine Beast dungeons or whatever it was called.
The Divine Beasts. That's just what they were called. They weren't even dungeons. Yeah. They were just Divine Beasts.
Yeah, the Divine Beasts. They didn't want it. I mean, they had grander plans in mind. They wanted to do dungeons from the get-go in Breath of the Wild. But again, that was just a pure limitation of the technology. And they're like, all right, well, we have to have some kind of quote-unquote dungeons. Let's just have them go into Divine Beasts. So it's so it's even kind of weird to think about. It's very nice that they're able to actually utilize the strength of the Switch over the Wii U, but at the same time, the Switch is what, a 7-8-year-old piece of technology, and it almost makes me feel a little bit bad of man, if they were so limited on what they had to do and made such a great game still with Breath of the Wild, imagine how much better. As much as I'm loving Tears of the Kingdom right now, imagine how much more amazing it could have been on, say, something with the power of a PS5. And I'm not even talking about making it look prettier graphics wise, Tears of the Kingdom, but in 4K. But just what other really simple things like putting caves on the side of mountains, super easy things like that you think would be easy on a PlayStation 5, but just are unable to do it on the Switch. So there's a little bit of sadness there. I can't help but think about that.
I think though too, that's it's a weird okay, yes, I agree with you 100%. The one thing, look, it hasn't bothered me playing Tears of the Kingdom. There are moments of slowdown that I know. I'm not I don't see it. I see it, okay? But it doesn't bother me. The 30 frames for 95% of the games works fine. It's great. Works great. But I recognize we need the new hardware. We need the new hardware. But the problem is that they have had 6 full years to work with this system and know this system, and that's how they've been able to make this game. If they switched hardware, updated hardware, they would have had to relearn parts of it, right? Reassociate themselves with certain parts of it, things like that. So it's this weird dynamic of you're with this. That's why with the PS4, some of the most beautiful, comprehensive games started to come out towards the end of it, right? That seems to be the thing with all the systems. Typically, not all the time. Typically, the best, coolest looking games, whoa, how are you doing this, are towards the end of a system because you've had time with it, yeah. Right? And this team literally had the entire Switch's lifespan to do this, and then some, because they knew the Switch was coming, so they had to make it. So, I mean, that's a testament to them. That's how they've gotten it running.
And I actually have not. One thing I just find very interesting is graphically speaking, I don't have any issues with it, which is usually something I do.
Art style. If you get art style right,
that's what Wind Waker.
I got this thing blown up on my big old OLED TV, okay? And I put it on Vivid. It's gorgeous. I see the anti-aliasing. I see all that. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to be it's perfectly fine. It's just like 4K. No. But it's fine. It works great. I have no issues with it. And I don't know how they did it.
Again, my thing is less of making it look prettier, because to be honest, like you guys said, that type of art style doesn't need to be made prettier. It's very pleasing to the eye as is. There's not much more you can do with that. And my thing is just even the things we're not aware of, again, going back to the example of dungeons and caves on the side of mountains, it just makes you wonder what type of features that could have been that aren't because of the Switch. So I think that's a little bit of a bummer. And I just I know that's kind of me sound like I'm dogging on the game a bit, but I have to admit it's a triumph of the Switch hardware. Like Mike said, at this point, they know the Switch like the back of their hands. Is basically the second game they've made, and the style, Breath of the Wild, and then now this. So they've had time to master it, and definitely it shows. And I guess just kind of end my beginning ranting spiel, and maybe this can be something you guys touch on a little bit more. I do think if you look at the reviews for the game online, though, it is trending a little bit behind Breath of the Wild, which at first that was something that I was kind of confused about. It's like,
Are
I
you
mean,
saying,
anybody
did you
can
say the reviews or the sales?
the reviews. If you
Oh,
look at its total reviews, it's super high, but I think Breath of the Wild is like a hair higher. And
that's
at
because
first,
there's a
that very
couple troll. There's a couple troll reviewers out there that they don't care.
well,
They want clicks, or maybe
well,
they actually believe it. That's fine.
I mean,
Whatever.
there's always gonna be those troll reviews, though. I mean, I imagine there's probably troll reviews for Breath of the Wild too, as well. And kind of what I was thinking about that now I kind of understand it a little bit more. Because playing the game, like I said, I can't go back to Breath of the Wild. It's such a good game, but I think it suffers a little bit from what God of War Ragnarok suffered versus God of War 1, where you have the first God of War, and it was just such a change of pace from the other God of War games. It was just like, wow, this is actually going for like a huge story driven approach. Like, this is awesome. The characters are well written. This is very emotional. It was just so unexpected and it was such a trailblazer that it just like caught people way off guard, just comparison to the rest of the franchise. Then you had Ragnarok, which Ragnarok did everything better than the original Norse mythology God of War did. But I felt like people were a lot harder on that one because it's like, all right, you already set that bar. You're not reinventing the franchise. It's kind of just a continuation of the previous game and how you already reinvented it. And I feel like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom is having kind of the same thing going on where people are blown away by like, oh wow, like compared to Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, this is way different. This is incredible. And then Tears of the Kingdom, while it's better than Breath of the Wild, it is kind of a continuation as opposed to reinventing the entire formula. So I do think that's kind of interesting to keep in mind that like we are reviewing basically a true sequel, and they've always advertised as being a sequel, but this is definitely it's refining something they already reinvented opposed to trying to go and reinvent the franchise again. So yes, that's the end of my rant.
I have no issues with reusing assets in any game as long as it's good. That's it. That's it. One of the reasons I think Ragnarok was able to be as good as it was is they did reuse a lot of assets. And while admittedly, and Scott, this is a point you might bring up, or at least you brought up in our side conversations, is reusing assets is fine, but they were going from PS4 to PS5 hardware.
Yeah.
It still looks and feels like a PS4 game. This still looks and feels like Breath of the Wild, but it's on the same system. So, but personally, I don't mind reusing assets like Zelda has done because it allowed them room to make some other like cool things, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of that in a minute. But before I kind of dive into my first impressions, I want to make sure that like Scott, like, is there anything you wanted to kind of kick off?
Talk
Or
about
is
your
that your-
dislikes.
So,
Tell us what
hang
you
on.
hate.
Well, Mike, are you wanting everything now?
I
Or do
want
you wanna, like,
everything. I want
You
everything,
want everything now?
I want you
right.
guys to lay your cards out on the table. I already got
Okay.
I got my hand.
All right,
so
so
lay
we're
it
not
out on
going
the table.
subject by subject. We're going everything. All right.
Let's do it, man. So we talked about what you like, and you can do whatever order. You could do dislikes, likes, whatever. I don't care.
Okay. And I just want to re-emphasize that I really like this game. Like, hence me already being 35 hours into it. But it's one of those things. Like, if you really love something, you're gonna call it out. Like, if you love somebody, it's like, hey, bro, you're going outside in your boxers, or you're on camera filming your podcast in your boxers and about ready to go and get filmed in it. Like, if you care about something, you're gonna call out the issues. You're gonna want the best for them. And I'm gonna say it. And I'm gonna get hate for this. And this is I'm literally. It's gonna sound like I'm trolling. It's gonna sound like I'm doing my Scotty Porta Potty rant. This is 100% of my feelings.
Resident Boomer coming in.
Here we go. Get ready for it. Get ready for my Zoomer rant. I kind of hate Ultra Hand. I really, and it's not even about me using it in the game. Like, I get how to work it. I'm at the point, at first it was kind of awkward to use, and now I'm like, all right, I can figure out these puzzles, and I can put together perfectly functional, vehicles to ride. I hate the culture Ultra Hand has spawned. And I said it immediately, like, to these guys in our Discord chat. When I started playing the game in the first tutorial island area and how they were having put together stuff, I was like, dude, this is made for Zoomers. This is like the Minecraft, Fortnite, like those creative gamers that they're trying to court. This is like tailor made for Zoomers. And I guarantee you, TikTok, like by this time next week, there's just going to be shit everywhere on TikTok about this. And sure enough,
Not by this time next week. It's already been going for like since release.
Let's put it this way. Before I even put my hands on the game, Mike was sharing videos of giant flamethrower penis robots and stuff like that. And it's one of those things, but don't get me wrong, I'm not a complete stick in the mud. Like, I actually spent a decent amount of time, like, looking on videos on Twitter of these incredible, super elaborate, like, Ultra Hand builds. Like, somebody freaking made a Hammer of Dawn orbital laser, like in Gears of War, and just had it floating around, blowing up bosses. And I'm not gonna lie, you see those videos and it's like, that's some cool shit. My big problem is that's not what Zelda is. It's almost as if you go to Sonic and you go and make it a murder mystery, or you go to Overwatch and put it in a dating sim, which funny enough, both those games actually had those things added as jokes. But then you go and say, oh yeah, by the way, the new Zelda game, oh, it's gonna have building simulator stuff in there. You'll be able to make big rig trucks and orbital lasers and saw type torture devices to put moblins in and stuff like that. And like all the other new things they added into the game, like recall is some big brain shit, and I've used that thing in so many cool ways. Fuse is my guilty pleasure. I just love putting together stupid ass weird weapons. I love it. It's incredible. Even Ascend is such a godsend. I'm just like, every time I use that ability, I'm like, oh my god, why couldn't this be
Ascend is the goat.
Why couldn't this been in Breath of the Wild? I would, if they just made a DLC for like $20, you can get Ascend in Breath of the Wild. It's like, sold. I'd go for that. But like, I know maybe Mike is going to strongly disagree, but those other things I told you about, Ascend, Recall, if they took those out of the game, like think of a Tears of the Kingdom without those abilities, and it would be a very different game. It'd be kind of a sad game. It would, in a way, it would make it be a very different experience. The game would be less of a game without them. If you took out Ultra Hand, if you took out the ability to make big rigs and giant penis flamethrower robots and whatnot, would you get the same experience of the game? Would you go and fundamentally lose something enjoyable about that game experience? I don't think so. I think, the great thing about Breath of the Wild was exploring, was all the items you can find, equipment you could find, weapons, like all these different things. And I don't know of a single person who walked away from Breath of the Wild and said, you know what Breath of the Wild needed more of? Penis robots. I don't think it was needed, and I think it was blatant catering to the Zoomer crowd. And I don't think they needed to do that because this game was already the most anticipated game in quite some time, before anybody even knew what the hell an Ultra Hand ability was. So I very much am annoyed that they catered to that crowd and they kind of put in a feature that I quite frankly think is unnecessary and very distracting. Is kind of creating this culture of people that don't even give a crap about the Zelda franchise. It's so far removed from the Zelda franchise. Like, again, don't get me wrong. It's always great to reinvent yourself and add new things like Pokemon. Pokemon needs Ultra Hand. Pokemon needs psychological horror. It needs something to go and make it so freaking like, it's like Zelda's or Pokemon at this point is almost a lost cause game wise. Zelda did not need to go and do something like that. So again, I'm just throwing it out there. That's my bit. Huge thumbs down for Ultra Hand. I could go and get nitpicky with the story, but like Mike said, I think we're only 5% in on the story, and I think it's very premature for me to start bitching on that. But yes.
I was going to ask, by the way, have either of you completed a dungeon? I'm not talking about like little things or shrine. Okay, that's fair. We're not talking about story.
One thing that is kind of funny, and I was going to talk about this more in my like funny story experience section, but I guess because it is related, I explored most of Hyrule Castle already, not the floating part of it, but like the area left behind, and it goes down deep. It goes down really deep, and it has lots of secret passages. And I'm pretty sure that like the areas I was exploring are supposed to be end-game areas. And there was this one really like deep down stairway I went to, and full of like uber monsters. And by the time I finally got to the bottom, there's just this little stone plaque. And I was like, oh, I wonder what the stone plaque says. I'm pretty sure all the story elements it told me about, I'm not supposed to know yet. It's just like, oh. So I did find it kind of funny that like, I don't think this was the way I'm supposed to like discover these very, very important story points. But okay, that's cool. And there you go. And that is officially my spill. I got it all out. Got all the negative. Got all the bile out. Now it's
All right.
Matt's turn.
Now, Matt, you're up. Take whatever order you want.
So here's, I'm gonna kind of treat this more bullet point status style, because that's one, how I operate and retain information. Two, I think that's how the majority of people retain information. So here's my criteria that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about first impressions, things that I love, and then my beefs. First impressions, right when I started the game, you start out, and this isn't a spoiler because you literally start out in like the dungeon of Hyrule Castle with full hearts. You have your armor, you have the master sword, you have everything. My first thought was like, oh, am I going to start with all of this? And I stopped and thought, like, no, they're going to find a way to take it all away so you can do it again. And of course, that's what happened. That's not really a knock. It's just from a storytelling perspective. Like, no way you're going to give me all my stuff. No way you're going to give me my stuff. Why are you even teasing me with it?
But I loved how they did that. Like, they were like,
I was
you just went
about
to Breath of
say-
the Wild, and the cool
I have-
way. Yeah. Anyway, okay, I'll let
I
you do it. You do it.
I hate to say it, but I do agree with Mike. Like, do you just prefer how other sequels do it, where you start off the game and you're just like back to free hearts, and they just don't even reference it all? It's like, yeah, in the previous game you were like Mass Effect. When you start Mass Effect, like you were a walking killing machine. Now Mass Effect 2, suddenly you have 100 health again and only access to 1 power. I at least appreciated that they went and
They
explain
explain
the
it.
reason why,
And
Yeah,
it's
they at
actually
least
really
threw in.
cool. And like when the hearts pop up, I loved when the hearts pop up and they just go. I was like, no, I don't like this. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
I mean, at least they explained it. Unlike every other game, that's just like, you're back to being weak. We're not going to tell you why. Just
See, it's funny because I was literally going to say all of that and feel the same way, but you all just cut me off because you felt you had to defend
Sorry.
it, jerks.
Sorry.
Let me
I'm sorry.
finish. I was
Mike
going to
started.
say,
Mike started.
I was going to say, I actually thought that was cool. Like you start with it,
Oh.
and they actually gave an explanation as to why it happened. I won't tell you what, because you should all play this game. That was my first impression. Was like, oh, I get all my stuff. That doesn't really make a lot of sense because I'm sure they're going to make me reset it. And then they do the thing and explain how it's reset. I'm like, that makes sense. I'm with you. That was cool. Now, my next first impression, let me finish, you jerks. You meet this sort of spiritual guide creature thing early on. And my first thought was like, oh man, furries are going to love this. You want to respond to that one? I'll let you. Any thoughts?
That's my response. I mean, I had the
Furries.
same thought.
You disgust me. But I'm glad that Matt always is looking out for you guys. And
Listen,
keep an eye
Scott's-
open to
To each
for
their own.
improved
Scott's-
content.
Scott's looking out for the bears. I'm looking out for the furries. And did you see the washboard abs on this thing? They went all in on that thing. So anywho, that's my first impressions of like, ooh,
Did you
Oh,
see the
no.
mane that he had, man?
that's
I
going
mean, like,
places.
That's glorious.
Yep. And then as soon as I started building, my first initial impression was, hey, this is clunky. I don't know what I'm doing. And then I stopped and thought, I'm like, oh my gosh, how soon will people start making penises? The answer was immediately. And there's a phrase from a show on Apple TV. I haven't seen all of it yet, so I haven't gotten to it, but there's a phrase called TTP. The show is about game developers over a pseudo World of Warcraft type game. But it's about game developers. It's a comedy. You guys actually would enjoy it because it's
Rob
made by some-
McElhenney, right?
It's
Yeah, it's
made by
Mystic
some of the
Quest.
Sunny guys.
Okay.
Yeah, the Mystic
So
Quest one.
Mythic Quest. So they have a phrase, and this actually might be a phrase in the game industry called TTP, which stands for time till penis. How soon? How
Mhm.
soon are gamers going to make wings? And that was my first thought. I was like, I bet it was instantly, and they did instantly. Instantly, they made it. Anywho, as I started building and struggling with it, my first thought is like, this is Zelda Tears of the Boomers because we have to Fortnite our stupid
Mhm,
dancers next.
mhm.
So I would 100% empathize with Scott's initial reactions on that. Is like, oh my gosh, this game is made more literally for the younger generation, the Minecraft generation, which that's the most popular demographic right now. The people like that creativity, that freedom. Where Scott and I typically probably enjoy a more traditional Zelda experience. My wife feels 100% the same way as we do. Is that it's not really Zelda, like it's still Zelda, but now it's like Fortnite, Minecraft in Zelda, and it feels that's more of a focus than what Zelda used to be. It's not really a Zelda experience, it's its own thing right now. I'm not saying that's bad, but for me personally, it's just like not really my thing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Another impression I had, and this is actually a question for you guys, is I'm talking to one of those early robots, and the robot says, "Please don't hit me." Question: did you guys hit the robot?
I didn't. I was
I
afraid of the
didn't.
robot. I thought it was a trap.
I
It's like
did
if I
hit.
hit this robot, he's gonna like go ape shit on me, and I'm just gonna.
I did hit like near. I was like chopping a tree or something, and I saw the reaction of the robot, and I was like, "Oh, I feel
Right.
so bad, even
So,
just being near."
so I, like Scott, didn't hit the robot. I'm like, I don't want to hit the robot. What if this robot kills me? Also, my wife was watching. I didn't want her to see me just attack this robot that asked me not to attack it. And then later on, I accidentally like moved something or did something, and I accidentally hit a robot eventually, and I felt so bad. I felt so bad when like I dropped a rock or something on the robot, and he was like, "No, no, please spare me." I'm just like, "Oh
It's
no,
like a
I'm sorry."
turtle. He
Okay.
just kind of they kind of go. Bloop,
Yeah,
they go. Gotta protect myself, and I'm like,
Okay.
"Oh no, you don't. I'm sorry. I'm
I
just
felt so
chopping a
bad.
tree."
I
Okay.
felt so bad. And now I'm going to talk about things that I absolutely love about this game. One, the ascend ability that Scott mentioned is
Yes.
freaking
Yes.
rad. That is the
Yes.
coolest
The best.
ability.
Hmm.
And I still forget
Mhm.
it exists sometimes. Like there is a tower that you can only get to
Yeah.
via the ascend ability. And I totally forgot. I cleared this whole area. I'm like, where the freak do I need to go? I have to find mushrooms. There are no mushrooms. How do I get this stupid tower? And I will freely admit this is a game that I will be using the guide for on some things. I have no shame. Don't give a crap. I'm going to use the guide for some of these things. I looked at the guide and it said, Matt, use the ascend ability. I was like, gosh dang it.
Matt,
I forgot I had it. Did you do the same thing?
I love the fact that you just said that right now because I went for the
Yes.
exact same thing. I went to that because I went to the cave before talking to him.
Yep.
Because again, when I see a cave, I just have to go in it. Doesn't matter what is. There could literally be a star fragment right next to me. It's like star fragment or cave. Gotta go in the cave. And so I cleared the entire cave out. Went up there to the guy, and he's like, "Oh yeah, go in the cave underneath. I need mushrooms." I literally spent 10 minutes getting every single mushroom in my inventory, dropping in front of this guy. It's like, all right, you want mushrooms? Here's some mushrooms. Oh, he doesn't like this mushroom? Maybe he's looking for a different type of mushroom. I spent so much freaking time on the mushroom part of that, just tossing mushrooms. In our defense, I do think he gave some very misleading dialogue. Like,
Yes.
his dialogue was a very big red herring. But yeah, I did
Yes.
the same exact thing where I'm like, I spent 15 minutes on this son of a bitch. I'm sick of this. How do I get in this freaking tower? Go look at a cheat guide. Oh yeah, just go underneath and ascend. It's just like, oh yeah, ascend. That's a thing I can do, huh? Mother effer.
I know.
I was so upset with myself. I was
I'm
so upset
I'm
with
so
myself.
glad you did the same thing because I did cave first before going up there. And I'm like, I didn't see any mushrooms in that cave whatsoever. Mike, did you do that tower already?
No, but I had a similar experience. But I didn't spend 15 minutes, so I went down a well, found the gourmand that likes to just live in various wells. I don't even know if you guys have come across that.
Yeah.
Another story thing. And there was no stair, and I couldn't climb out at the time because I didn't have enough stamina. And I was like, how do I get out of here? Oh, I can teleport. And before I teleported, so this was all in a matter of like a minute. Before I teleported, I was like, wait a second, I have the best ability in the game. And I just used Ascend. I just looked until it was green. I went, cool, popped out. That was the end of
Yeah.
it. So I've had moments of that, yes. But it wasn't I
I
didn't do that tower. It was another tower that I had to get into the tower and open the doors for somebody to fix it. It wasn't a mushroom thing.
similar story then because yeah I actually had to get out of a well and I'm like how do you get out of this stupid well, so I actually ate some of my consumables to have enough stamina to crawl out of the stupid well. I'm like, man, am I supposed to be here late game? And then like fast forward a few hours later, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have the ascend ability. So I say now confidently, I am ascend first. I think about it. Can I ascend here?
Mhm.
Can I ascend there? Can I ascend here? It is there. It is now at the forefront. But holy crap, was that rough at first? I'm like, why can't I do this? And anywho, Scott, I'm glad you suffered the same exact thing I did. That brings me a lot of joy, and hopefully it makes you feel the same because hot
Yeah.
dang, I was really mad at myself
Mhm.
for that one. All right, moving on for things that I love. The game is big, and I hate open world games. I truly hate open world games. This open world is absolutely phenomenal. Scott said it, Mike, you said it. I don't know in this conversation, but in the previous conversation, at least in our Discord, the world feels alive, and it I love that. I truly love that because most open world, even like a game like Horizon, I've been playing a little bit of Forbidden West, not in a while, but just to kind of keep going. And as I start playing this game, I'm just like, it feels clunky. I can't do everything. I know I have to get stuff. This combat isn't that
Don't
fun.
go back to it, or the
Yeah,
game will have a bad taste in your mouth. I'm just gonna
yeah,
warn you.
I won't. But Ascend, that's things that I love. Ascend is so freaking rad, and everyone seems to agree. And then the game feels truly alive. Another thing I love is where you would climb the towers in Breath of the Wild to kind of map out the area. These towers exist in this game, but they have an extra perk. That perk is called Yeet. These are the Yeet towers.
The
That's what I call them
coolest
in my brain.
animation.
They are. We won't spoil it other than the way it looks is just awesome. But essentially, you get shot out of this tower like a cannon and you fly high into the air, and then you can dive glide and then glide. And then there's some other stuff you can do later to get to your destination should you want. So now it's just like, man, I got to get there. And I could go to the shrine and then walk up a mountain, or you pick a tower, you just launch yourself out of it, and then you glide over to it. It allows more coverage than ever before. Like, it doesn't guarantee you can reach everything with one tower, but it dramatically cuts down
Yeah.
your trekking time. And I love the Yeet Tower. You have
Yeah.
to agree, both of you.
100,
And one thing,
100 million%.
and one thing too that I'm not sure if you guys noticed, and like it always makes you feel like, okay, I'm not cheesing it. This is literally how like an option they threw in there for us to do is there's a shit ton of stuff you can find laying around to make stamina increasing potions or food or whatnot. Because I've been there. It's just like I really want to get to that place. I don't want to walk there though. I just want to go there. Find the nearest tower, launch up, and yeah, you can go and glide there. And unfortunately, you know, you have the stamina wheel that will most likely run out before you can get close enough to it. So you know what? Eat some food, recover that stamina. There has been places, mostly in like the sky region, like very far off islands I just want to get to. I'm not gonna lie, I would go make about 10 stamina recovery dishes, launch from a tower, and I have to say, like, Link was probably getting to be a pretty fat boy by the time he actually glided to said tower, because he's just eating stamina, mushroom recovery, kebabs left and right.
All right, so Tower Yeet, love it. Another thing I like is the variety in solving some shrines and puzzles, and this is one of the selling points for a lot of people. Is like maybe the game tells you how you should solve it, and I'll talk about that more in the next podcast for discovering cool moments. But one thing I absolutely love is like, okay, I could do that, or I'm gonna just make a big giant stick and solve it. That's one of my favorite things is just solving a shrine or a problem with a big giant stick, and that is so funny to me. And during a stream, a shrine, I was streaming. I streamed the game once. I'm not streaming the whole game on Twitch. I just wanted to do one, lead it up into our podcast, so I can play with, like, have some folks watching, chat with them, things like that, which was a lot of fun. Go follow my Twitch channel. And I solved the shrine, and two different people in my stream said, Matt, you solved that in a completely different way than I did. And the other person was like, me too. I was like, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool that the same problem could be solved at least three different ways between three different people. I like that. That was just something that I thought was really, really fun. And this next thing that I love is just a fun little gimmick. You don't get a lot for it, but it's just so satisfying. The sign guy.
Right?
How much?
Every
do you
time I
guys
see him, I'm
love-
like, yeah, let me help
Okay,
you.
Scott's in the minority, so we'll let him talk about it in
Okay.
a second. But
Okay.
I love Sign Guy. One, because it makes me think of pro wrestling, because Sign Guy is a known thing in pro wrestling community. I just love the Sign Guy. Like, I was just like, all right, I'm on a mission to this tower. No. Scott wants caves. Matt wants Sign Guy. And these puzzles are, there's some guy holding up a sign that he needs to hammer into the ground, but he can't apparently let it go so he can hammer it. He needs you to help hold the sign. And you could be Link and just hold the sign, or, which they don't want you to do, so they don't let you do it. Instead, you have to like build contraptions to balance the sign so then he can hammer it into the ground. And this guy's scattered all over the game. All over the game. And you get like, I think 20 rupees and some food and some random stuff. So as far as like return on investment, doesn't really matter, but it's just a fun little puzzle where I'm like, okay, the shine is shaped this way, the wind's going that way, it's probably going to fall that way. If I put some boulders here, maybe that'll solve it. And then I did one of these on stream and I thought I built the perfect thing and I put it down and I'm like, all right, the sign's going to land on the rock and I'm going to win. And then instead, I didn't realize I had my rocks balancing against the sign instead. And then I let go and then the rocks just rolled off a cliff into a lake. And I just watched it the whole time like, well, I did that very wrong, didn't I?
Didn't work.
Whoops. They're just so fun to like build a contraption. And this is kind of opposite of me saying that I'm not big on building. That's such a small scope of it. It actually is kind of fun, mainly because I like making the most ugly contraption possible to then balance the sign. I love the sign guide challenges.
They're bite size. They're fun.
They're bite sized. They're fun. I'm curious from Scott. Scott hates them. Tell me why.
I won't say that I hate them, but at first I was really enjoying them. I want to say like I completed the first 10 I came across, but now it's at the point where like the opposite reaction you have, like you're trying to do something and you see the sign guy, like sweet sign guy, I'm going to stop and help him out. I'm the opposite. I'm like, oh my gosh, this sign guy again. I don't have time for this dude. I need to go and get to this village, or I'm trying to go and do this and this and that, and I'm not going to go and stop it for 10 minutes to go and for a 20 ruby reward and a random food item. So I think it would be a little bit better, like one of these two. One, if there was less of him, you know, if he wasn't freaking that like every single supply. I don't know officially what those random.
That's not it. I think it's just randomized at certain locations. It's not at every single one, because I've been to those before, and maybe he's just not there. I've probably met him 25 times,
dude, like,
or more. Like
he's everywhere for me. Or if you're just gonna have him everywhere, give him something that's actually like a worthwhile reward. Just like, come on, man, come on. I could literally just farm a bunch of freaking herbs in this forest to the right and get more rubies than the time it takes me to help him out. So it is fun. I'm not going to go and say, like, he's totally needs to be removed from the game, you know, because I do agree, like, some of them are fun. And there's some that I'm like, all right, you caught me on a good mood right now, my bro. I'm going to go try to help you. I would spend 5 minutes playing together this horribly over-engineered monstrosity of a device. And I'm like, there's no way that this is not going to keep up your sign. And then sure enough, the sign just, like, flips off, does a cartwheel away, does some weird-ass shit. And I'm just like, bro.
This brings me so much joy.
It does. Mainly one thing that kind of amused me was like I was trying to solve one of these and my wife was watching and I was so committed to using my structure. I'm like, no, I can make my structure work. No, I'm not changing it. I was getting so stubborn. My wife's like, Matt, just do it differently. I'm like, no, I want to do it my way. And then eventually it didn't work. So what I did is I just took my crappy construction, put it sideways, put it against it, and then just kind of wrapped it around with some other things, and it worked. It was the ugliest looking like thing I've ever made in this game, and it worked. But it was just like, all right, I did it. I did it. It was neat. But anywho, while I go back on that, adding fuse as a core mechanic adds more value to the crap you collect. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, just like I have 99 Bobblekin horns. Who gives a crap? I am doing literally
Who needs a key sai? I can only make so many elixirs.
Who needs it? So the fuse ability actually adds more to the things that you collect. I think that's a good thing. Overall, I wish there wasn't weapons that break, but I know that's kind of the whole bit of you're surviving. You need to. You're supposed to fuse. But I do like that that's a step in like, hey, we have it, like it or hate it. It is an improvement, and that to me, it makes a bit more sense that there is now this fusing ability. And for those that haven't played it yet, essentially the fusing is you have either a shield or a sword, essentially, that you can attach something to make it better. And you can make some cool things or you can make some stupid things. For example, I'm like, I'm going to put these mushrooms on my shield and see what happens. I have a shield. It gains no benefit whatsoever, but I just have a bunch of mushrooms on my shield now, and that's funny to me. That's funny. Whereas you're like, I have a one-handed sword that does only 5 damage because all the weapons are essentially crap now. And I put this really strong monster part that otherwise would have been useless in Breath of the Wild on it. And now I have like the strongest weapon in the game until, of course, it breaks, which then you have to make another one. I just like that they expanded upon it and made the monster parts and things you collect have a bit more value than I feel they did in Breath of the Wild.
Everything has value. Everything I've come across, it has value somewhere, somehow. You're right. 100%.
So I like that. Now, I'm going to talk about my beefs, and I'm going to go relatively quick just for this time and sake of all the listeners here. Allow me to preference. Objectively, I think this is the best Zelda game ever made. these beefs that I have, similar to Scott, it's things that I think would make it better. And I don't say this to like just crap over the game. These are just things that I would like to see to make the game better for the player. The first thing I want to talk about is also fusing. Fusing has to be done in a menu. Any form of fusing, anything like that. If you have to go to your menu to grab your item, throw it on the ground, and then fuse it with your weapon. You just got to pick it up. So if you're holding a really strong item and you pick up a sword and you need to fuse it, there's no like instant like tap tap, here you go. It's a go to your menu, hold it, toss it on the ground, activate your fuse ability, choose where you want to go it. I just think it's a little bit more convoluted. Where I especially hate that is when I'm trying to fuse something with my bows and arrows. If I have my arrow cocked, the only way to fuse something to that arrow is to hit up on, I think it's the D-pad, and then go through this giant list of items. So I have to sort it mainly by the most used, choose that item, and then I can shoot. So if I want to shoot several bomb arrows, several fire arrows, I have to every single shot equip it. Go to the menu, choose it, equip it. Go to the menu, choose it, equip it. And that also applies to the sub map of the game when you have to light up the dark area. I just call it the dank because that's funny to me. So to light up the dank, you can either use an arrow, again, cock your arrow, hit your sub menu, and you can't let go because if you let go, you're going to equip whatever you're over.
You use arrows?
Initially, I used arrows.
Oh, okay.
You can light it with that. Then the other way is you can throw them. However, the only way you can throw them is you have to hold the throw button as if you're going to throw your weapon. Instead, you have to hit the up button on the D-pad, choose your thing to then hold it and then throw it. After a while, you get kind of used to it and it's relatively quick, but I want to be like, Matt, I just want to hold these. Just let me equip it and run with it. Stop making me go to the sub menu. I absolutely hate having to go to a sub menu anytime I want to fuse an arrow or anytime I want to throw the items that light up the dank area. That drives me nuts. Just let me hold the item or let me auto equip an item. Like, hey, I'm hitting a button that says use all of these until I tell you not to. I think that would make the game so much better. Another issue I have is with resetting your building stuff. Sometimes you're trying to build something and it just has this weird angle and you need to like move it in a way. It's just hard to like really get used to how to reset your stuff. I wish there was a smart button where you say, hit the button where it kind of resets
There
it
is.
exactly. Here's the thing. It doesn't always work for me. It basically resets to kind of how you picked it up. So when I pick up stuff, it's often at like an angle and I want to like kind of put it like here. It doesn't always reset for me.
Weird. Maybe it always goes flat for like I could pick it up weird and I instantly, as soon as I pick it up and it's like a weird, like a flat board, it's like this, right? Where it's like you can't turn it, you have to like turn it and go down and stuff. I just push ZL and it just flattens it right out. And then I got to rotate it if I want to rotate it like a certain way. Right. But it flattens out every time for me. That's really weird.
Either both me and Matt are dumb, or we have some glitchy game or whatnot. But like, it does the same exact thing for me as it does for Matt. And yeah, whoa, definitely.
Or I've just never come across. I mean, I've come across wonky things that I picked up that are like sitting up on the side of a hill or something, you know, and I just flatten them out and they're fine. Weird. That's weird.
All right, so it's just a me thing. So we'll track that up to user error. But even when I hit that button, it just seems like it just kind of resets it to a weird angle. Maybe it's an issue with my Switch or my Pro controller. Anywho, I have struggled with moving the actual pieces. I know it's kind of hard with a controller to really like get stuff to navigate, but eventually you have to learn like if I need it to bend one way and it's at an angle, first I have to rotate it, then I can kind of flip it and then rotate it again. It's just kind of a lot for my boomer gamer brain to kind of wrap around. So that's probably more personal issue or preference over an actual game flaw. I'll yield that. No issues for me on that one. But I do want to talk about what Scott mentioned early on is those of us that don't want to solve something 50 different ways are dramatically slowed down compared to previous games because we now have to spend time doing stuff we don't really want to do. I don't really want to build a boat to go to that island. I'd rather just climb somewhere tall and fly down to it. And thankfully, there is a lot of cheese factor involved for someone like me. And I'll talk about this in our next podcast about some cool moments because it is a cool moment for me. But for those of us that aren't that creative or at least want to be that creative in a game, it is a bit of a bummer and a bit of a disappointment. And I'll yield that this is a personal preference issue versus a flaw with the game, but this is a personal Matt beef, and Scott, I think, said it pretty succinctly the way that I felt earlier, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But I don't want to build a Fortnite. I don't want to have to like build the super duper flying contraption that honestly takes a long time to build. Without spoiling anything, there are ways to speed that up, and I won't dive into that too much. But even with that, it just takes too long to like build these things that I might need to go somewhere. Personally, I don't want to build a bunch of stuff. I really don't, but that's a key core mechanic of this game. Now, this one is a legitimate beef that I hate. I don't have infinite bombs anymore.
Right? Right?
I don't have infinite bombs anymore because they removed that ability. They moved all those abilities. And again, the narrative explains as to why. I get that. But not having like bombs at the ready and infinite makes it like, holy crap, I need to hoard these bomb flowers. And then you have to go back to my previous point. You have to equip it from the stupid sub menu if you want to use those things. I miss just having the bombs just at the ready. And I can get if they want to limit that mechanic, but I used it so much in Breath of the Wild to do so many things. Like I could break these crates open, but then my weapon takes damage, which sucks. I wish I had the infinite bombs back, or at least an easier way to use the bomb flowers, or just more bomb flowers. So I miss the infinite bombs. Even like I would have taken infinite bombs, even if it meant like they do no damage to your enemies. I'd be very okay with that. I do miss having that at the ready, but now I have to go to a sub menu and hope I have it in my inventory. I also have a beef with horses in this game. The whistle to call them to you doesn't work unless you're in the vicinity of said horse. And I can get that to an extent in a game that's trying to have a little bit of realism, but Zelda is not a realistic game. Let me whistle and get my dang horse. That's what I want. That would make the game better for me. I know there's DLC in Breath of the Wild where you basically get a motorcycle, which is cool, and you can actually go places fast enough. I don't like that. I have a horse. I got the horse. I went to the stable and everything. I teleport to this other area and, oh, look, I don't have my horse because the horse didn't teleport with you. I just feel it's weird to have like this sense of realism. Like, of course, your horse didn't teleport to you versus a game where I have magic arm power. So let me swim through rock. I would like to be able to whistle and have my horse show up. That would be rad. I also overall do not like weapon durability. Breath of the Wild had it. After a while, it became fine, but early on, it just sucked, especially with bows. I love using the bows. They break all the time. It's just annoying. And I'm also not a fan of quests that are like, hey, I hope you found these things and didn't make something else out of it because now you need it for my certain quest. It's just like, gosh dang it. I just did something with that, or I just sold or ate it, whatever. So that's just a personal annoyance for me. That being said, the side quests actually feel like they matter a bit more from a narrative perspective. We all agree with that. I think that's actually a plus.
And they're varied. They're not just the same thing every time.
Exactly. And then my last one is not all rewards are worth the time. There are so many things like there's a chest and you work your butt off. You get the chest. What do I get? 20 rupees. It kind of goes to Scott's thing with the sign guy where it's not worth it to him. Whereas for me and Mike, we enjoy the sign guy just because they're fun. But if I am like working my butt off in like a shrine to get to a special thing, it's like, hey, here's a weapon base that you have 5 of. Like, that sucks. So it's a game where anything that you want, you can get anywhere. So when I work hard to get to a chest, I hope for something that matters a bit more. So I went a little ranty on that one, a little off tangent. I got distracted. I do apologize for that. But just to recap, we talked about my first impressions, things that I love, and those are some of the beefs that I have. My biggest beef that I wish they would fix is the sub menu and using things like bomb flowers and the things that make the area brighter. Just equipping every single time I want to use that special thing drives me nuts. Absolutely hate it. And the horse thing. Those, if they fix those, I would be a lot happier. But the last thing I really want to hammer on is I don't like building. It's preference. I get that. It's objectively, again, the best Zelda game ever made. I just don't like having to build like, hey, you should build this boat. I do like cheesing it with a big giant bridge or a big giant stick. But sometimes you still got to build the stupid boat. I don't want to. But I think realistic beefs that objectively need to be made better is the sub menu when it comes to equipping things like bomb flowers, the bright whatever flowers to light things up. That I think can't really be defended as a good core mechanic. Some of the things are yield on because of preference, but just swapping between the sub menu during a fight sucks. And I hate that. That all being said, I love this game. I'm having a blast. I think that would make it better. I'm done.
All right. Well, just for the sake of trying to keep it brief here, I'm a fanboy of this game. Huge fanboy. I'm going to just readily admit it. Ultra Hand. I'm not going to, you know what? I'm not even going to, they're your gripes, and you're going to keep them. I'm just going to say I disagree with them. What I do agree with, and actually it's funny, because the 2 of the 3 issues that I have with the game, and I'll just start with those first. 2 of the 3 issues, Matt said. And I find it funny. Those are the actual legitimate, I think you can make this better. I think everything else is preference. But the 3 things, Koroks, don't care for him. At first, like the first 5 or 6, I was like, man, they really hit these guys. And now, and actually I have a story for our next podcast with a Korok. I don't care. I get them purely just because I want to expand my stuff. I just do not care. So I think Koroks are weak, which is sad, but whatever. The other 2 Matt already stole from me. I don't the horse. You could whistle and it's just off screen and it just shows up. Right? And I had that beef with Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a huge reason why I didn't really enjoy that game, is because they made it too realistic. I'm playing a game, guys. I get you want to be realistic. Be to an extent, which is so weird in this game because everything else they hit the perfect level of it's realistic enough, but it's still a game. It's so weird. Horses, I agree 1,000,000,000%. That was one of my points. My other point is kind of tied to your reset. I found I don't think they do a good job of telling the reset because I only realized the reset was there 15, 20 hours in when I read it in the controls. They didn't tell me. I don't remember them saying, when you do this, if you need to reset, push this button. I don't remember that. And if they did, maybe it's me. I read it at the bottom. There was a button, and it said, reset, and I went, what does that do? And I pushed it, and it flattened out, and I was like, why didn't I know this 20 hours ago? What the heck? So I think that was missed. 100%. And maybe I was being a boomer myself, and I just missed it. First of all, why is Taru, he's a Zonai researcher, why is he such a beefcake? Why?
You ain't wrong.
Why? If you don't know it, if you're watching this, listening to this, you don't know who Taru is, Tauro, just look up an image search. Why is he such a beefcake? I hate it, but he's hot. And he's smart. I hate it. I love, so we talked about Breath of the Wild being a tech demo now compared to this. 100% agree. It's also made me appreciate, Breath of the Wild, the story lent to that desolation, right? Because this was it was still in disrepair. Everybody was scattered. They were hiding. They weren't coming out to live in this world. That's not an excuse for the game. Seeing this game has shed light on that. This game is lived in. It is night and day difference. It isn't I can kind of say, no. Tears of the Kingdom says, look at Breath of the Wild and look at this. There's a clear 1,000,000,000% improvement here. There are people all around. There are cool quests. Some of them aren't quests. You're just watching it unfold. There's people traveling. There's people that need help. There's people stuck. There's people hidden in caves. I actually have a really cool story about a message in a bottle and finding a random guy. We'll talk about that next. So anyway, that's cool. The new abilities are game-changing, literally and figuratively. We've already touched on that. I love Ultra Hand. I can understand why people don't. You can play the game however you want. I imagine this is kind of like what D&D is, where here's the core. I have played a completely different way than Matt has, than Scott has, and no way is incorrect. I am Link. I am going on the adventure. I get to choose if I want to be creative, if I want to be logical, if I want to be functional, where I want to go, how do I want to solve these things, who do I want to hit up first, do I want to help the sign guy, or do I want to say, screw you, deal with it on your own, do I want to search caves? I can do it. It really is an open world. If open worlds were this, if Horizon added just one of these functions, I'd probably play more open worlds. But they're so restrictive. And this game is it's not just big. My other problem with open world games is that they're just big to be big, right? Like, they're the same quests, they're the same things. You're like Scott and I and your trophy achievement suckers that just have to get those things. And it's not really worth it, but we do it anyway because we hate ourselves. This game is so dense that it's like thing on thing on thing on thing, and you don't have to you have to do this. Like, you can if you want, and that's the draw. And I have so many other things. Quests are all like, I literally, let me just go through this. Stamina doesn't feel like an immediate need to upgrade this time around. Breath of the Wild stamina was a killer. I upgraded my hearts like crazy at first. I feel like they made stamina better. Ascend is like one of my favorite additions of all time. Reusing assets, we've already discussed that. I'm okay with reusing assets like Ragnarok if you add on top of, and they did. Ragnarok did. So many other publishers just say, nah, just lazy, just squirt out a turret so we could sell it. I don't like when they reuse assets that way. That's garbage. I just love looking at rooms and buildings. Like, go into Purra's room, which, by the way, Scott thinks Purra's hot, and he ain't wrong. Go into Purra's room, or go into somebody's room, or like go into her old place, the Hateno lab, and just look at what they put. Like, they put like drawings and pictures and like diagrams of stuff, and sometimes you find things that help you with like cooking or something like that, and you're like, oh, that's a recipe. It's just cool stuff like that. What I love about this game the most, and maybe you guys can chime in on this, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, it makes me feel like a kid again. I'm playing this game, and I just feel like I'm playing like the feeling I got when I played video games when I was like 8 years old. Like, this is something new. I feel like I'm on an adventure. I can escape from this garbage and just enjoy my time. But this game just makes me feel like a kid again. Like, I'm playing it, and I think that's part of the reason why I just don't want to stop playing, is that I'm like, there's something new every single time I sit down and play the freaking thing that I didn't experience before.
No other game has bestowed upon me this sense of wonderment and unknown. And there have been several open world games I've played, but this is a game where the world feels it's funny. Like, a lot of open world games have a lot of stuff going on at the same time, which takes away a little bit from that wonderment. Because truly in Zelda, you show in that area, you look on your map, you're like, that looks like a mountain peak. I'm going on that mountain peak. I don't know what's going to happen. There's no quest over there, but I want to go. And potentially I'll get rewarded for it. Likely I'll find a shrine up there. No other game gives you the sense of wonderment that I mean, Breath of the Wild did to an extent, but this one even more so. Yeah. So hey, to wrap up, I guess this first podcast, and Mike, of course, I'll let you go home. Is Scott and I for sure love it. Obviously, Mike loves it. We love this game. It's a feat, and I'm looking forward to talking about on the next podcast some like unique, cool moments that we experience, and just to get an overall impression. I think if you were to ask any of us, even after Scott and I railed on a few things, is like, Scott, would you recommend pretty much everyone play this game? Everyone.
Yeah. If you have a Switch and you don't have this game,
yeah,
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, don't have a Switch then. Like, don't. Just get rid of it. Yeah, so, and again, the beefs are beefs. Whether we agree on whether they make the game better or not, whatever. At the end of the day, I think we can all agree on this. It's an open world that's interesting that we're all playing and actually enjoy. And we don't like open world games.
That's a kicker. We hate open world games.
For multiple reasons, if you haven't guessed in many of the times that we've talked about it in this podcast. On that, we all agree. So that being said, let's wrap this up for this one. Normally, they're going to be shorter. I think this one went longer just because Tears of the Kingdom, this is a very unique situation. But in the future, we're going to be trying to split them, shorter chunks so that you can listen to them on your drive somewhere or whatever, and we'll split them up. So until next time, we'll catch you later. The Scotty Porta Potty rant ain't happening on this episode, so you got to wait till later. Sorry. I know that's why you're actually watching, so you're going to have to watch the next episode. That being said, as always, appreciate you listeners, viewers, you the best, and we'll catch you later. So bye.